Get good grades. Go to a good school. Find a stable career. Why do some of the smartest people struggle financially, while others with average intelligence quietly build wealth? At first glance, it doesn't make much sense. We've been taught that success comes from knowledge, education, and hard work. Study harder, make better decisions, earn more money. That's the promise most of us grow up believing. Yet real life tells a very different story. Highly educated professionals often live paycheck to paycheck. Some doctors, lawyers, and engineers earn impressive salaries, but still feel trapped by debt and financial stress. Meanwhile, people with ordinary backgrounds quietly invest, build businesses, and accumulate wealth year after year. So what's really happening? What if the biggest obstacle to financial success isn't a lack of intelligence, but the way intelligent people think? Behavioral economists have spent decades studying why humans make irrational financial decisions. Their conclusion is surprisingly simple. Money is driven less by IQ and more by psychology. In other words, the habits that help you succeed in school or climb the corporate ladder may be the very habits that hold you back from building wealth. And the most dangerous part? Most smart people don't even realize they're doing it. In this video, we'll explore 3 hidden mental habits that quietly keep intelligent people poor, why our brains fall into these traps, and how a simple shift in thinking can completely change the way you build wealth. Because when it comes to money, being smarter isn't always the advantage we imagine. Sometimes, it's the invisible beliefs we've never questioned that cost us the most. For decades, society has sold us the same promise: get good grades, go to a good school, find a stable career, and financial success will naturally follow. It's a simple story, one that millions of people grow up believing. But reality tells a very different story. Today, it's surprisingly common to meet highly educated professionals who feel financially stuck. They work long hours, they earn respectable incomes, yet somehow they never seem to move forward. Their paychecks arrive and disappear almost immediately. Another bill, another subscription, another upgrade, another expense that somehow feels impossible to avoid. Saving money becomes something they'll start next month. Next month never comes. At the same time, there are ordinary people quietly building wealth year after year. They don't have elite degrees. They aren't necessarily more talented. And they may not even earn significantly more. But they consistently make different choices. They invest before they spend. They avoid lifestyle inflation. They think in decades instead of days. Over time, those small decisions create extraordinary differences, which leads to an uncomfortable question. If intelligence is such a powerful advantage, why doesn't it automatically lead to financial freedom? Because intelligence and behavior are not the same thing. Knowing the right answer doesn't guarantee making the right decision. In fact, most financial mistakes are rarely caused by a lack of information. We live in an age where anyone can learn about investing, budgeting, entrepreneurship, or personal finance with just a few clicks. The knowledge has never been more accessible, yet millions of intelligent people continue making choices that quietly work against their future selves. Why? Because money is rarely a math problem. It's an emotional problem. It's a behavioral problem. Every purchase, every investment, every financial decision is shaped by invisible habits, unconscious beliefs, and psychological shortcuts that our brains have developed over a lifetime. And until we understand those patterns, earning more money doesn't necessarily mean building more wealth. That's why some of the smartest people remain financially stressed, while others with ordinary intelligence quietly become financially free. The difference isn't what they know, it's how they think. Imagine receiving a raise. For a brief moment, everything feels different. You tell yourself that life is finally getting easier. Maybe it's time for a nicer apartment, a better phone, a more comfortable car. After all, you've earned it. Nothing about these decisions seems irresponsible. In fact, they often feel like signs of progress, and that's exactly why this trap is so difficult to recognize. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation. Human beings are remarkably good at getting used to improvements. The excitement of a higher salary fades. The new car becomes ordinary. The luxury apartment becomes normal. Very quickly, yesterday's dream becomes today's expectation. And once expectations rise, expenses quietly follow. Without realizing it, every increase in income is matched by an increase in lifestyle. The result is a strange paradox. People earn more than ever before, yet feel no richer than they did 5 years ago. Behavioral researchers have observed this pattern across different countries, income levels, and professions. The problem isn't that people enjoy nicer things. The problem is that satisfaction moves faster than income. There is always another upgrade waiting, another purchase promising happiness, another version of success that seems just one paycheck away. Meanwhile, wealth grows in silence. It doesn't announce itself with expensive watches or luxury cars. It accumulates quietly through assets that nobody notices: index funds, retirement accounts, business ownership, cash reserves. To an outside observer, these choices look boring, but over 20 or 30 years, boring decisions become extraordinary results. The uncomfortable truth is that many intelligent people mistake consumption for achievement. They reward every success by increasing their spending. Instead of buying freedom, they buy bigger obligations. The race never ends because the finish line keeps moving. Financial freedom rarely begins with earning more. It begins with needing less. And the people who understand that simple idea gain something far more valuable than a higher salary. They gain time, the ability to choose, the freedom to say no. Ironically, the greatest luxury isn't owning more things. It's no longer depending on them to feel successful. And yet, even people who escape the upgrade trap often fall into something even more powerful. Not the fear of spending money, but the fear of losing it. That fear shapes millions of financial decisions every single day. And it may be the biggest invisible obstacle to building wealth. Imagine two people standing in front of the same opportunity. Both have saved $10,000. Both have read the same books. Both understand that investing over the long term has historically created wealth. Only one of them actually invests. The other keeps waiting, waiting for interest rates to change, waiting for the market to become less volatile, waiting for a better moment, waiting until they feel completely certain. Months pass, then years. Eventually, they convince themselves that being careful was the responsible choice. But psychology tells a different story. Researchers have repeatedly found that people experience the pain of losing money much more intensely than the pleasure of gaining the same amount. Losing $100 feels far worse than finding $100 feels good. This tendency is known as loss aversion, and it quietly shapes countless financial decisions. It explains why people hold cash for years while inflation slowly reduces its value, why they panic during market declines but feel comfortable buying when prices are already high, why they spend months researching a simple investment but make impulsive purchases without hesitation. Ironically, intelligent people are often even more vulnerable because intelligence creates confidence in analysis, and analysis creates the illusion that perfect certainty is possible. So they read another article, watch another video, compare another strategy, open another spreadsheet. Every new piece of information feels productive, but action keeps moving further into the future. Behavioral scientists call this analysis paralysis. The mind mistakes preparation for progress. It feels like movement, yet nothing actually changes. Meanwhile, someone with less knowledge quietly invests a fixed amount every month without trying to predict the future. They don't know exactly what the market will do next year. They simply accept that uncertainty is part of the process. And over decades, consistency often beats perfection. This pattern appears far beyond investing. People delay starting businesses until they have the perfect plan. They postpone difficult conversations until the perfect moment. They wait to write the first chapter, launch the first product, or make the first move. The search for certainty becomes a sophisticated form of procrastination. Perfection feels intelligent, but progress creates results. Perhaps the greatest financial advantage isn't having better predictions. It's becoming comfortable with uncertainty, because every meaningful investment carries some level of risk. Every successful entrepreneur has experienced failure. Every long-term investor has watched markets fall. Every wealthy person has made mistakes. The difference is that they understood something many intelligent people struggle to accept. The goal is not to avoid every loss. The goal is to avoid standing still. Money compounds, experience compounds, skills compound, but hesitation compounds too. Every year spent waiting is a year that can never be recovered. And there is one final psychological trap that may be even more invisible than fear itself. It has nothing to do with markets or investments. It begins the moment we start comparing our lives with everyone else's. And in the age of social media, almost nobody escapes it. Imagine waking up on a quiet Saturday morning. Before your feet touch the floor, you reach for your phone. Within minutes, you've seen someone buying a new house. Someone else is flying business class. A former classmate just announced a promotion. Another friend is driving a luxury car. None of these moments have anything to do with your own life. Yet somehow, they change the way you feel about it. Psychologists call this social comparison. Human beings naturally evaluate themselves by looking at other people. For thousands of years, this instinct helped us understand our place within a tribe. But today, our tribe is no longer 50 people living in the same village. It's hundreds of carefully edited lives appearing on a 6-inch screen, and our brains were never designed for that. Without realizing it, we begin measuring success through visibility. The nicer apartment, the designer clothes, the expensive vacation, the latest phone. Every purchase sends a silent message. I'm doing well. The strange part is that most people aren't buying things because they truly need them. They're buying stories. Stories about status. Stories about identity. Stories about who they hope to become. Behavioral economists have noticed a fascinating pattern. People often spend more when they believe others are watching. Not because the product becomes more useful, but because it becomes more visible. The reward isn't ownership, it's recognition, and recognition is addictive. For a brief moment, external approval creates the feeling of success, but like every temporary emotion, it fades. Soon another comparison appears, another lifestyle, another achievement, another reason to feel behind. The cycle begins again. This may explain one of the greatest paradoxes of modern life. Many people spend years trying to look wealthy, while quietly sacrificing the habits that actually create wealth. Real wealth is often invisible. It looks like money left unspent, investments nobody talks about, an emergency fund nobody photographs, a retirement account that receives the same contribution every month. Patience rarely attracts attention. Consistency almost never goes viral. but both create extraordinary results. Perhaps that's why some of the wealthiest people in the world live surprisingly ordinary lives. Not because they dislike beautiful things, but because they understand a simple truth. Every dollar spent to impress strangers is a dollar that can no longer work for your future. The irony is impossible to ignore. The fastest way to look rich is often to spend money. The fastest way to become rich is often to stop trying to look rich. And once that idea takes root, something unexpected happens. Success becomes quieter. Decisions become easier. Comparison loses its power. Because your life is no longer being measured against someone else's highlight reel. It's being measured against your own long-term goals. Money stops becoming a performance and starts becoming freedom. Which brings us to one final question. If wealth is shaped by habits, emotions, and invisible beliefs, can anyone change the way they think? So, why do smart people stay poor? Perhaps the better question is this: what does it actually mean to be smart? For most of our lives, intelligence is measured by answers, the right grade, the right degree, the right career, the ability to solve difficult problems faster than everyone else. But money plays by different rules. Money rewards patience, consistency, emotional control, the willingness to accept uncertainty, and the discipline to repeat ordinary decisions long after the excitement has disappeared. That's why wealth rarely arrives in a dramatic moment. It grows quietly. One investment, one decision to save instead of spend, one impulse resisted, one unnecessary purchase left unmade. None of these choices feel life-changing, but over years they become something much larger than individual actions. They become habits, and habits slowly become identity. Someone who invests every month begins to see themselves as an investor. Someone who lives below their means begins to see themselves as financially independent. Someone who values freedom over appearance starts making decisions that naturally create more freedom. This is one of the most powerful ideas in psychology. People rarely act against the identity they believe they have. Change the identity, and behavior begins to change on its own. Maybe that's why the wealthiest people often seem surprisingly ordinary. They are no longer trying to prove anything. They don't need every success to be visible. They don't need every purchase to communicate status. Their money has a job: to create options, to create time, to create peace. And perhaps that is what financial freedom has always meant: not unlimited luxury, but unlimited choices. The choice to leave a job that no longer makes you happy. The choice to spend more time with your family. The choice to pursue work because it is meaningful, not because the next paycheck is already spoken for. In the end, the greatest competition was never against your classmates or your colleagues or the strangers whose lives appear on your phone every day. It was always against the version of yourself that wanted immediate comfort instead of long-term freedom, against the part of your mind that feared uncertainty, that chased approval, that confused consumption with progress. And the remarkable thing is this: that voice will probably never disappear, but you don't have to obey it, because every day offers another small decision: to save a little more, to compare a little less, to think a little longer, to invest in a future that nobody else can see. No single decision will make you wealthy, but thousands of quiet decisions just might. So perhaps intelligence was never the missing ingredient. Perhaps the real advantage belongs to those who can manage something even more difficult than money: their own behavior. And maybe that's the hidden psychology of wealth: not knowing more, but choosing differently again and again. until those choices become the life you once imagined. Because in the end, money doesn't simply reveal how smart we are. It reveals what we repeatedly choose to do. And fortunately, choices can change.